I don't believe I need a microphone.
لا
Okay.
كويس عادي.
لا محتاجين معلش مايك عشان اللايف.
Just for live عشان live فيسبوك.
Can I have to hold the microphone?
Sorry. Sound.
1, 2, 3. Is this working?
بس ممكن نفتحه ونقربه.
But you don't have a wireless mic? First thing to do. 1, 2, 3. Testing.
Today we thank Dr. Professor Moeness Amin for attending today and give the presentation about most recent book. Dr. Moeness is a professor in UCE and the director of Center of Advanced Communication, Villanova University, Pennsylvania, USA. He's a fellow of IEEE and fellow of SPI and IET and Euro ASIP. Dr. Dr. Moeness received his PhD from Cameroon University in 1980, and he now is a fellow of IEEE Institute and IET Technology. The talk today is about radio frequency sensing, home combining his talk today. You can start.
Shukran, Doctor. Thank you very much, and thank you for arranging this presentation. This was a short notice. I certainly honored and privileged to be here. This is my second visit to Nile University. The first one was just brief visit, but this time I was asked to give a presentation. Kindly so, and I'm sure there's going to be many other presentations to come in the near and distant future. So we're just talking about the topic, right? So I give the professor here options to select between 3 topics that are different, but he made the correct choice, if I may say so, and he picked up this topic because it is very emerging, it is here to grow, it's multidisciplinary, it touches on civil engineering, not civil engineering in terms of civil, but civil applications of the radio frequency sensing. And there are so many open problems that remain untapped. So if you're doing a master's thesis or a PhD dissertations and you're looking for topics, certainly this is an area that will pay dividends for many, many years. I just listed some of the sponsors. There are some sponsors are direct sponsors for this research endeavor. Some of them kind of on the boundary, on the perimeter. But you can see it's a collection of industry, federal agencies, and also defense agencies. So I just give one slide on what's signal processing, because that's an area we are in. So according to IEEE, and there are IEEE fellows, senior members here, so they know very well what IEEE signal processing stands for. But we are in the business of pulling meaning from broad sources of data around us. So we are hunting for information all the time. So you can see on the left, you can see on the right a synopsis of the applications where we are front and center in it. So we are the detection, we are the estimation, we are the tracking, we are the classification, we are the prediction, we are the localization. So all of these different applications, which no matter what you do, where you go, you have to detect. You know, what's detection? You're asking yourself, is something there? That's detection. Where is it? That's localization. What is it? That's classification. And certainly, anything we do, we need to know whether it is anomaly in the body, cancer, or an F-16 radar tracking, or whatever. You need to find with something there. What is it, and where is it? Okay, so we cover the 3 areas pretty well. So certainly people are doing wireless communication, signal processing for wireless communication, signal processing for radar, signal processing for ultrasound, signal processing for acoustics, right? Signal processing for healthcare. That's what I'm talking about now. So the radio frequency sensing, the active is called radar. Okay. What is radar? Radar is you're sending electromagnetic waves, it bounces from a target, it comes back to you, right? And you try to make sense out of the data, right? So the post World War II, this is where the application of radar was clearly manifested, right? And then since then, we know that at the airports, right? This is pulse Doppler radar. This is phased array radar. Synthetic aperture radar, that's how they map towns from the air. Right? And of course, the resolution now is much, much higher than this. You can see the make of your car, okay? The weather, Doppler radar, that's how we find what the weather is, right? The police, they are over speeding, right? This is all application of RF sensing. Ground penetrating radar, that's to see what mines and underground. Between North Korea and South Korea, still there's 1 million mines buried in the ground. Then you have the civil application now. So this is traditional application of radar, right? I mean, radar sometimes is very scary. You say, radar, what does it mean? It's a military defense. Absolutely not. One of the most, I would say, areas of hiring electrical engineering in the US is radar. And they're all foreigners, right? Because of the civilian application of radar. The radar engineer now, or the person who graduates with master's and PhD in sensing in general, right? The market is quite open. So I'm here to tell you about the civil. I mean, we grew up with the traditional applications of radar. Right? That's behind us. Everybody knows about it, but not everybody knows about the civilian application of radio frequency sensing. So the first thing is actually remarkable. That was, Comcast is a company, is a multi-billion-dollar company in the US with headquarters in Philadelphia, which is 20 miles away from me. And I had started publishing in this area, I would say 2-3 years before they approached me. It's a cable company, it's also home security. Right? So many companies in home security, they want to enhance their security. Right? They want to find out, for example, how many intruders, thieves, how many thieves, where are they, where they're coming from, right? So it's an adding capability of that. So, I mean, they approached me and said, well, we read your papers about RF sensing for homes, so let's find out what we can do together. Right? So what we see here actually is a floor in their building, right? And this is the radar. It's smaller than this one here, right? And they put it behind the wall because, for good reasons, that they want to find out that if you tell me that I'm going to put on RF sensors at home, what can this sensor do, right? Sometimes you put it in the dining room and you want to find out what's happening in the living room. So there is a wall, right? So they put a wall and put the sensor. And they put together in the building, business building, they put together a sofa, and a couch, and living room, as if it's just a kind of a typical household, right? Lamp and things and desk. So the idea here is that radar, that small device, will look at you all the time. It will know when you sit, when you stand, when you bend, when you kneel, when you walk, with accuracy close to 99%. So it's watching you all the time. Not a camera, because the camera is going to show your face, your clothes. No. I'm going to show you the radio frequency signature. This has nothing to do with how you look, right, or your body structure. So in terms of privacy, it is gold. So just to give you an idea, here is a video that was shot at that floor, right, using our algorithm. So here is going to show you what the person does. So the radar now is looking behind the wall. The guy is walking, right? Steady walking. His name is Arun, by the way. He's sitting. He's pointing the lamp turns up. He's falling.
Alexa, read my notifications.
One new notification. From Notify Me. Arun fell down on November 26th at 11:24 a.m.
So what this device is doing using our algorithm is processing the data and making a decision what kind of motion the person has done. With a timestamp, like 12:05, he sat down. 12:07, he stood up. This is called activities of daily living. You look yesterday at home, for example, right? What did you do at home? You were either sitting, standing, walking, or laying down. Right? Of course, sometimes you say, well, you know, that's my private business, why the radar? No. Falling is very important. Falling is a multi-billion-dollar business in America. Because, and as you will see, people above certain age, right, they fall. And if they stay on the floor for a long time, they die. That radar will tell the neighbor, the son, the daughter, the doctor, a person has fallen. Come and intervene. So it becomes a technology that will allow people to live alone. Right? That's called aging in place. Aging in place. People buy homes, they stay in their homes for 30, 40 years. They don't want to move to an elderly home or move with their daughter or sons. They want to stay in their apartment, they want to stay in their house. Right? So this technology is called aging in place. You can stay in your apartment, you can stay in your home. Right? You don't have to move to live with others, for example. Right? Another thing, suppose that you are living with your father, who's an elderly person, but you're going to go to work. You are not living from 8 o'clock, from 9 to 5, for example. You're out of the house. He's alone. He walks, he fell. Then what? That device, of course, you cannot put a camera, by the way. That radar, you can put it even in the bathroom. Falling in the bathtub, hit your head, that's catastrophic. You cannot put a camera. Right? So it becomes a technology, reliable, cheap, safe, secure, doable, purchasable. Right? And that's where the money is. Of course, you and I, we don't think about the money, but that's where, if the industry does not feel they're going to make money out of this, they will dismiss it. Okay, so here is the scenario. This is actual video shot in an elderly home. Here's an elderly woman with a walker. If she stays on the floor, the chances she will pass away. We need a radar in the hallway. We detect the fall and alert the first responders. First responders could be relatives, neighbors, doctors, nurses. Right? This is the technology. According to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, each year at least 300,000 older people are hospitalized for hip fractures, and more than 95% of those are caused by fall. So in terms of the business opportunity, that's a good topic. Right? Another thing you will never think about, the deaf, people who cannot hear or talk. This is called ASL, American Sign Language. So the reader will look at the motion of the hands and arms and will read what you are trying to say. Right? This is, by the way, how the reader, this is time and this is frequency. This is how the reader sees the motion of your hands and arms. Right? I am a classifier. I'm an intelligent signal processing. I'm a machine learning guy. Right? I'm going to look at this and say, train the network, do feature engineering. Right? When the reader sees this, it will tell you he means an earthquake. When the reader sees this, he means push. So we're providing a man-machine interface for the unprivileged, the deaf, the mute. A business opportunity and a great topic. And it costs $5,000. You can go and buy a small reader like this. Right? And you can have, by the way, these are my students. Right? They learn the sign language for 3-4 weeks. Right? We have, by the way, we got data from the native, the people who are actually deaf, who use the sign language. But this is the British sign language. Also, there are groups in England who are working in this area. About the Arabic Sign Language, it's a great project. Talking about this. This is gold. Timely, emergent, has a human factor in it. Right? You cannot beat it. And then this is just a menu of the motion and what the reader sees. I'm going to explain to you briefly what this one is. So this is basically a good application area of RF sensing. We never think about it. Huh? Then another thing that made me actually expand my research, and we do many other things apart from that, but this is an area where everywhere you turn, you find an application. You will never think about what I'm showing you. Actually, I never thought about it myself until I got this letter. This letter was addressed to me from whom? From a prisoner. A prisoner. Arizona Department of Corrections. That's what it means, prison. He read one of my articles, and he sent me this. I'm not gonna, of course, I have redacted what he said because, but the essence of what he said is that he read an article, then he drew my attention to the people committing suicides in prison, killing themselves. Then I thought, what's the relationship between this RF sensing and people committing suicide? And then I found out that the Department of Justice in the US actually sponsored a project where it is an RF sensor. People who hang themselves, they have to go, stand on something elevated and then destroy themselves. That motion, by jumping from a table or a chair, the reader can detect it and tells you exactly that there is a jump. So the guards can rush. And that was a multi-million-dollar project. Signal processing, actually it's more of a communication because we have to, the prison cell is perfect. Why? Because there's no furniture to block the radio frequency right? From the sensor to the person, right? Then I found out that that is certainly a very important application for the government. Despite many improvements, inmates, meaning prisoners, suicide remains the long-standing problem for correctional institutions. Suicide rates have been observed as high as 47 per 100,000 in local jails and 15 per 100,000 in prisons. Hanging is the principal method of suicide. Other applications. Baby falling off the crib. Instead of video is not going to do anything at night. This RF sensor. This baby jumps anytime. It will alert, and with accuracy and dependability comes to 99. I mean, the odds of missing is very small. When a person sleeps on one side all the time, develop what's called bed sores. Bed sores. I can put the radar in front of the bed. I can tell you how many times you tap. So for elderly who cannot turn and develop those bed sores, they are actually a cause for death sometimes. That, by the way, this is not hypothetical. These are real applications. From factories, people falling off from the floor, right, and injuring themselves. This is just a synopsis of our radio frequency sensors. The people are doing wireless communication, they have to model the signature of the environment, the wireless signature, because there are multi-pass, there are all the things, right? So there is certainly, people are doing antenna design. It's part of it. People doing beamforming, the antenna beam pattern, right? I want to find how wide in azimuth and in elevation. So these are 3 books. Of course, the radar imaging through wall, that's when I started. Compressive sensing, that's a very important tool now. And this is actually my last one. It's focused on this. Unfortunately, I didn't know that I'm coming to the Nile University, so by coincidence, I got the first book, but I should have brought this one here, Radar Indoor Monitoring. This is a complimentary copy to the Nile University, and I said Nile University with best wishes, Moeness. So this is for your library. Okay. But certainly, I would be more than happy to mail you several copies of the last one.
Next time, sir.
Next time, sure. So the evolution of this radio frequency, in fact, kind of I'm telling you my own story in this. So radio frequency is very simple. I mean, the radar concept is very simple, right? I mean, you have a transmitter, you have a receiver, right? Transmitter emits electromagnetic pulses, right? It hits the target, it comes back, right? You have a receiver, right? You can detect how far the target is, and you can detect how fast the target is, right? And if you have a beam, you can detect the angle. So you have the range, the angle, and the velocity. So we started with, forget about the velocity. None of you is moving, right? So if I were to image this room, nobody's moving. Would I be able to distinguish a chair from a person? Right? Now, if this young lady moves her hand, I can find her. But if she's totally stationary, breathing, we can find breathing and heartbeat, but not that reliably. Right? So forget about motion now. Let us find out that somebody outside this building, right? This goes through the whole imaging. That's this book. the number one sponsor of this area is the police. So somebody walking outside has a radar, right, looking through the wall. Can this person tell that this room is a lecturing room, lecturing hall? Right? This is called the intent. What's the intent of this room? I don't care how many people sit it. Right? But if I campaign here for half an hour and keep looking at this outside, I cannot see, right, through the wall. If I'm outside, the only thing I see is one person is moving around. You know, you can say there's a crazy guy there, or the guy's lecturing. Right? Nobody else is moving. Maybe somebody doing this, somebody reaching to the laptop, somebody looking at. So very small motion. That is one of the major challenges in urban security. So it depends on the mission. Sometimes I want to find the blueprint of this building. Where are the doors? Where are the walls? Where are the stairs? From outside, right? So if you have multi-story building, the question here, can this RF sensor tell me exactly, as if I went to the township, I got the blueprint, I know exactly where the walls, the interior walls, the stairs, the doors, right? And also the people. I'm not going to talk about this. Right? That's a different area. But as I said, the police, of course, it's a defense component, but the urban, we're talking about urban now. So it's a very interesting field, and more people in antennas and propagations are doing this type of work than signal processing. So these are all RF sensors, and I'm going to focus on this guy. This is an RF sensor that from outside, they push it against the wall. So that sensor here, actually made by a company in Italy, sends a signal, goes through the wall, hits you, comes back through the wall, the return, into the receiver. Hits you and you and you, right? So now, instead of finding the chair and the things, I'm going to track people inside. That's where the area started, but I said civilian application of radar. Radar didn't start civilian, right? So how the radar estimate the velocity of a person, right? If I hit this young man with a pulse and he's moving, the frequency coming back to me is not the frequency I'm sending. The difference is called the Doppler frequency. If he's moving faster, it's a faster difference or higher difference, right? Or a higher Doppler frequency. The negative, if he's moving away. Positive is moving towards me. That's it. So his velocity is proportional to the frequency difference. Very simple, straightforward. Of course, the wavelength, you know, play a role. So C over F is lambda, which is a wavelength. So he's going to put now, this is a real experiment, for you to see how this technology has matured. So he's putting this against reinforced concrete. And there is a person inside this building. Now, here is this person. This person is sitting down, like the professor. He's not moving. But his heart is beating and he's breathing. The white is the estimate, the radar. It's the person sitting down. So I know where the person is. Of course, I mean, there is jumping. Then he stood up and he's walking. You see here, these are called ghosts. Ghosts, these are false targets. because reflection of multipaths, that people are doing multipaths and things, these are all ghosts. Right? Then he's talking. So that's an application, right? Doesn't concern us because we are in civil application, but this is police, right? So you can say, well, it serves the society. Right? So this is called Doppler. Doppler is reflection from the body, from my torso. This does not tell you that I'm holding a microphone with my left and swinging my arm with my right. This is called micro Doppler. Now, if you see what you did yesterday at home, it is all micro Doppler. The way you sit and stand and swing your arm and bend and kneel, this is all very small Doppler frequencies, very small frequencies. Call it micro Doppler. Right? But this is different than somebody walking. Right? When they track targets, this is Doppler, right? Because the wings of the aircraft they don't swing, right? Okay, but you do. Right? So how do I know that you are swinging your arms? Not by this example. This example just see people moving. Right? So why swinging arms is important? Because, number one, I want to find out whether the person is walking. Number two is that hostage. In a hostage situation, your hands are up, right? So that could be indicative there's something going on in this building that's out of the ordinary, right? So we have looked into this problem for 12 years. But now, instead of the sensor being outside, I'm going to welcome the sensor to be with me, the companion. I'm going to invite those RF sensors, right? They are my friends now, right? I'm going to put them inside my apartment, inside the house. They're going to tell whether I fell. Now, sometimes you say, why would anybody be interested how long I sat down yesterday? We said that the radar will tell us when you stood, when you sat, when you bent, when you kneeled, right? I can tell you that you just prayed Doppler from the motion of the prayer. Certainly, 100%. Right? Why? First of all, I would like to know whether you are praying the 5 times a day or not. I can tell you that, right? But number two, that's not what the company or what's the business in US, right? The business US. Suppose typically you sit down on the couch 2 hours a day. And yesterday you sat 8 hours. Something wrong with you? Are you depressed? Are you sick? Are you ill? Right? So that type of data is priceless. Very important. But you have to think business like they think. Right? So it becomes an indoor monitoring. An indoor monitoring. Not a camera. Actually, we surveyed the old people in the US. We said, would you rather have a camera or an RF sensor? Everybody said, forget about camera. So we're going to put the sensors inside. So now here is the bedroom, living room, right? The toilets and things. You're going to put that small sensor in every room. Very cheap. And let's see whether it's reliable. So here's indoor monitoring. Here's the applications, right? Security, remote health, telemedicine, assisted living, aging in place. I spoke about this before. Smart environments. That's where Comcast, the company, about sitting and standing and all things. Human-computer interaction. We talked about the deaf and the sign language. Now, in order for you to discern, to understand what type of motion, you need to understand what is the radar signature for the swinging arms, for the legs. So you have to dissect the human body into different and find out what is the radar signature, the RF sensor signature for this motion, right? So kind of dissect these things. So for walking, for example, do you know that when you walk, the highest velocity is your foot? Right there, the peak, right and left. This is velocity versus time. Here is a cyclic motion. What is the second highest velocity of your body when you move? Your knee. Right knee, left knee. You can see the second peak. What's the third one? The swinging, the hands, then the elbows, then the shoulder. That's very important. This is velocity versus time. So what is the business of radar? Well, radar measures the velocity by measuring the frequency, the Doppler, the difference, right? So I can use the radar to find out not only that you are walking, and that's a project with the Germans, right? Most of the cognitive diseases affects the gait. This is called the gait. Limping. So the asymmetry of the gait is very important. So if the right and the left are not exactly similar, this person has abnormal gait. Abnormal gait. Right? So what I'm going to do, so this is actually what the radar sees in the time. This is the signal coming, hitting a person. If you take the Fourier transform, that's what you see. This is the spectrum. But the Fourier transform does not show you the local behavior. Right? Does not show you the local frequency. By the way, this is a pendulum. Your arm is a pendulum. Right? This is the highest velocity is right here. This is 0. High, 0. Right? So in order to find out this velocity, you have to look only for this window of time. Then you take the Fourier transform, right? So what we're going to do is, in order to find the local behavior, this is now the walking, right? You have to apply a window. You have to window your signal and then slide the window. Every time you slide, you take the Fourier transform. You're trying to find the frequency makeup of this windowed signal. That is going to reveal the local velocity of the motion. Very simple, but there are more sophisticated ways to do it, but this is, in principle, this is the one. So here it is. Right? I'm sure one time or another you have done that. Right? Hopefully not falling. Falling, sitting. By the way, I don't know the time, but I'm going to go on until I'm done. Okay. Falling, sitting, bending, and walking. So I'm going to put a small device. This is the radar right here, antenna like this. Right? This is going to send a signal and coming the signal. And then I'm going to move this window. And I'm going to classify that. See, this is the one I'm operating on. It's an image. People are doing machine learning. Look at this as an image. This that goes into your machine learning now. And it's going to say, this is a walking place. Now, take a look at what the radar sees by moving this short window and plotting the Fourier transform. Right? This is a Fourier transform versus time. The time is the location of the window. Look at this. This is 4. This is how the radar sees you when you sit. This is the way the radar sees you when you bend. And this is the way the radar sees you when you walk. No face, no body structure, no clothing, total privacy. I want you just to look at this and to make sense out of it. This is positive frequency, this is negative frequency. Look at this. When you bend, the upper part of your body goes forward, that's positive Doppler. But the lower part goes negative. Positive, negative. When you recover, negative, positive. Of course, you're sitting away. The river is here. You're sitting away from the river. You're falling away. So this is negative frequency. Very simple. I'm going to take this one into the machine learning. I'm going to take this image. I'm going to train the machine learning algorithm. When you see something like this, please declare a signal. Let's find out what it does, right? So, another thing, chronic, that's what the home security interested, an intruder coming in like this. That's how the signature of an intruder. Neil, look at this. Look at his right foot going backward, that's what it is. Then when he stands up, he pulls it back. So it is interpretable. It is interpretable. Your kinematics, I can take a look at this and tell you exactly what the person has done. You interpret the kinematics. And this is the 3 dimension. So what I'm going to do now is going to take those, right? I'm going to do some kind of classification. Certainly, in this area, you can have what's called handcrafted features. You can pick up, for example, you can pick features from this called spectrogram, the time and frequency spectrogram. You can say, I'm going to pick the highest frequency. That means highest velocity, right? I can pick. So these are features, physically interpretable, and you feed it to the classifier. Classifier will tell you, well, if I get that high frequency, it must be walking. Of course, this is inferior to the neural net and deep learning, or something called principal component analysis, which really we did it, most of the examples here. But so we used some of the convolution neural net. By the way, there is an article that came out last year by myself and my colleague, Professor Sergi Burgos from Alabama, in the Signal Processing magazine. It was less than 12 months ago and already has 60 citations. So if you are interested in deep learning applied to activities of daily living, I certainly advise you to read this first. It will give you a kind of an overall picture of what's going on, and then you can definitely dive in as you wish. So let's talk about the fall. The ratio of the people aged 65 to the population aged 20 to 64. This is called old age dependency ratio. Why? Because typically the people from 20 to 64 are working, right? And typically people 65 are either part-time or in their way to retirement. So that in a way they look at this ratio as the workforce related to the people who are not working. You can see how the curve, 2050 is going to be close to 50%, 40%. So meaning that there are more elderly every year, not only in the US, but it's across. So the early fall, every 13 seconds, an older adult treated in the emergency due to fall. Every 20 minutes, an older adult dies from a fall. $34 billion in 2013, that's 7 years ago, 8 now. This is the cost. Expected to rise 67, now it's 68 in 2020, $68 billion. This is the cost of treating people with the fall. How do I detect a person falling at home? There are many technologies for, there is a wearable sensor. You can actually see it, You ask the person to wear a sensor, and from the inertia, you can say the person has fallen. But nobody wears these things, and they forget to wear it, or so what I'm proposing, what I'm discussing today is contactless, not wearable, contactless technology. In fact, it is contactless that suggests that leave the radar alone, don't turn it on or off. Don't turn it on or off. So the non-wearable sensor paradigm, which is to the right, has ambient sensors, radio sensors, then we have the Wi-Fi. Now, Wi-Fi is a radio frequency, right? They use the Wi-Fi. You don't have to have a designated device. You have the acoustic set. You have the smart carpet. There is a smart carpet. When you walk, when you fall on this smart carpet, there is that the person fell. But now we're focusing on the radio frequency technology. So I came up with this just last year. There was up in my building, the floor above me is psychology department, so I know that chair. We're talking, I said, well, you know, it looks like this is kind of an isogram. I said, what's this isogram? Never heard of it. This isogram is a term borrowed from behavioral psychology and simply refers to a quantitative description of an animal, or in this case, a person's normal behavior. It expresses the structure of the behavior patterns grouped in a coherent fashion to describe activities in a given environment. For example, when you sit and you reach for a cup of coffee, that's part of your isogram. So our isograms are different than the dog's isogram, different than the donkey isogram, human isogram. Not only we differ, but depending on the age, our isogram is different. I'll show you, right? But he put the things in context. So I said, wait a minute. If I go and define activities of daily living, what I did yesterday, I can categorize. There are states where I resided. I was either walking, sitting, laying, or standing. There's nothing else. Well, how about bending? No, bending is from standing. You bend and you come back. So you come from standing, you put a loop coming out of standing and coming into the standing. Right? You can bend from sitting. Professor can reach and get something from the floor. Right? But he's in a sitting state. Then I define the transient, the actions, from laying to standing. That's called an action. Right? Now, if you take at some of the isogram, if you are in the sitting, what can you do? Well, you can stand up. You can lay down. And you can walk. I want the reader to tell me what states I'm in and what actions have I done. This is for the young. Why? Because how can you go from sitting to walking without standing? Easy. In fact, I saw it myself yesterday. I was sitting with my mother. The door rang. He said, "When I say open the door." So I was sitting, although I'm not, of course, young. That's wishful thinking, right? But it was ringing the door. Hey, you know, the door. I wanted to rush and open. So from sitting, I didn't stand up and then start walking. It is one motion, merged. Right? But I won't do it all the time, right? I will certainly. I will stand first and then walk. So you sit, you stand, and even that standing is infinitesimal, but you stand. Right? So depending on the health conditions of the person, and I define the isogram. Each one of us has an isogram, but there are some commonality. But now at the larger picture, here is the motion state diagram that I'm going to build a classifier around it. Right? You have the states, of course, away and towards the radar. You can, there's nothing left really if you think about how you go from sitting to standing, from standing to walking. Right? It's fun. It's research is fun, right? Not Kramer-Rao bound and all the things. It's going to come later, probably. Right? So here is a German student of mine. He's going to now emulate as typical things. He's walking, pick something from the ground, sitting. All right. Then he bending from sitting, just and then he's going to stand up. I could have done that at home yesterday. The upper one is this spectrogram, which is a moving window Fourier transform. You can see the signature 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The lower one is the range from the reader to him. Right? If the person sitting and reaching something, I call that in-place motion. In-place motion on your computer, writing, is called in-place motion. Scratching, reaching out for a cup of coffee. Your torso is not moving, but when you walk, that's called translational motion. You go from your couch to the refrigerator. You translate it. Right? So the translation motion, I can tell you from the reader immediately. Translation. So I'm going to put this as a spectrogram. I'll put the classifier. I'm going to ask the classifier, could you tell me the sequence of motions that this person has incurred? Look, another one. He's falling, he's walking. He tripped on something, he fell. Took some time to recover, stood up. He found a chair next to him, so he sat down. He felt a little better, so he's going to stand up. Something we could have done. But I wanted to show something here very interesting. The way he fell, he was walking and then he didn't walk, stopped, and then fell. We call this heart attack fell. Heart then fell. Falling from standing, that's a different from what he did. What he did actually is very difficult for the classifier. He was walking, he tripped on something, he didn't stood, he just fell. So you can see here the upper signature of the reader. He was walking and the falling merged with walking signature. The falling signature, which is this spike up, because positive is walking towards the reader, spike. You see the spike? But before it was walking. The classifier can get very confused with that. But the Isogram now tells the following. I know he's walking. You are walking. What can you do from walking? You can stop or fall. You cannot sit from walking. Can you sit from walking? No, you have to stand up, adjust your posture, and sit. That's standing. So the classifier is giving very simple task. Could you tell me whether the person fell or stopped? Forget about bending and kneeling and sitting. That's not part of the calculus. That's not part of the mission. So he can actually get 100%. This is, by the way, this is no bluffing. This is real data. Right? Don't get deceived with these absorbers in the lab. There are a lot of reflectors here. Right? So this is with all the multi-pass, with all the things. Right? And we took this example to my office and the whole way, it didn't change. Tremendous application area. The last one. Not the last, the one before the last. The man-machine interface. You're sitting on the couch. You want to switch on the TV. You can use your voice, but you're going to wake up. Okay? So it's called gesture recognition. Right? So gesture recognition, I want the reader to see the way I move my hand. Maybe this, switch on the TV. Maybe this, changing the channel. That's all contactless technology. I don't have even to move. So there are many ways you can move your hand. This, you can snap your finger. So we said, forget about now falling and sitting, and let's find out gesture recognition. Those recognitions, or those motion, these are how the radar sees each and every one of them. See? See the first one. This one, this is how the radar sees. The top left. I'm going to feed those images to machine learning. And the machine learning will switch on the TV for you. If your intention was switching on, will change the channel. This is hand gesture. But some people don't want to. They are not very good with hands, especially the elderly. Parkinson's disease and things. How about arm recognition? By the way, the sign language for the deaf is a combination between the arm and the hands. Arm recognition. Man-machine interface. The radar will look at this, and you already will tell the radar, no, if you see me doing this, please do something to the appliance. Open the door of the refrigerator, for example. No acoustics. And these are the signature, how the radar sees. Again, you take a window to the Fourier Transform and you plot that. This is the frequency, this is time. Okay, so we applied, I didn't tell you what machine learning I use because you can, but here we use what's called principal component analysis. But if you take a look at the diagonal here, you know, you're talking about 98, 97, 99%, not bad. Last one, which is actually the most interesting. Gait analysis. So the radar is going to focus on your legs, and you see whether you are walking normally or abnormally. Why this area is fascinating. Any injury, somebody playing soccer, football, right? Injured himself, the first thing will show is the way this person walks. So it can be for rehabilitation, right? The person wants to find out whether he's recovering. So I can measure the degree of abnormality of the gait. Multiple sclerosis. There are many issues with gait abnormality. Can the radar tell the doctor, step aside, I will tell you whether it's a gait abnormality or not. And the results are fascinating. I couldn't believe it myself until we submitted the paper for biomedical engineering, IEEE. They said, I'm sorry, we cannot publish this until you get us clinical data, meaning getting us people who have cognitive issues and manifested in the way they walk. So we were able to do so with the nursing school. I'm going to show it to you. But in general, these are both gait. Sometimes I'm actually the subject, right? So both cases are gait abnormality. Okay. This lady has abnormal gait. You may not see it, but the radar sees it. Of course, walking with the cane, the radar can tell you this person is walking with the cane. In fact, not only can tell you you're walking with the cane, I tell you how you are using the cane. Are you using the cane in sync with the left or the right, or you are taking two walks and then use the cane. So I can tell you whether you're using the cane properly or not. Right? So this is the normal gait. So I was walking. This is how the radar sees. This is, by the way, most of it my foot. Up, going down. Right? By the way, in case you missed it, this is positive. The way you walk, you never swing backward. You lean on one leg and you move the other forward. That's why you don't see negative frequency here. Unless you're on a treadmill. The treadmill, you will take your foot the other side. Right? So when you move, you don't swing your legs backward. You lean on one and the other one is forward. That's why we see positive frequency. The first thing that we discovered is when the radar looks at you from behind, you are walking away from the radar. When you walk away from the radar, this bending here is fascinating. It's like a corner reflector. See the difference in the signature between moving towards the radar and backward, moving away from the radar. Nobody seen it before. So, does it help? Certainly it helps, because I can tell you that this person, not only from positive and negative frequency, I can tell you whether the person is walking away or coming back. I want you to show how I'm using the cane. The cane is in sync with the left. Look at the signature. This is where the cane is. This is the other leg. So the cane, because it reflects electromagnetic waves, it becomes stronger. But on, off, what is causing this on, off? Must be a cane. Right? Unless you have a gun right in your pocket that increases the radar cross-signature of your leg. And this is from the back. You can see cane, no cane. Cane, no cane. This is a signature of a person limping. The definition of limp is an ability to swing. Right? So a person is limping, is dragging the foot. When you drag the foot, slower, but the other one is faster. So you can see peak, no peak. Peak, no peak. That's limping. So here is another way I'm moving, let's say. You can see I'm moving two legs and then the cane. Two legs, then the cane. If you take a look at the signature, you can see two legs and this cane, which is more of a sinusoid. So all of the things, I'm not going to do it visually. I'm going to give it to the intelligent signal processing. It's going to tell me whether this person is moving the cane and how it's using the cane. So just simple things, again, those numbers have significantly improved. So we said normal walk, limping with one leg, limping with two legs, cane synchronized, cane out of sync. You can see the diagram that tells you the classification rate is all in the upper limits. Clinical data, which I'm going to finish with that. So we were lucky enough to have volunteers, 4 young ladies, who have different health issues that manifested, those issues manifested in the way we want. And we put the radar right here. And we asked every lady to walk. So this person A suffers from generalized dystonia, affecting multiple muscle groups on one side of the body. I can take a look at the way she walks, right? You may say, well, there's nothing wrong with it. Person B experienced a stroke, which caused different gait disorder. By the way, just for their credits, those ladies, not only they volunteer, they also very, very interested to see and to learn about the technology and how what it offers. Person C, due to relative strength of the left side of the body, the symmetry of the gait manifests itself in knees motion. I'm going to show you this really fascinating. But just take a look. Take a look at the way she walks. Now the radar is looking at the legs. In fact, it's looking at the human body, but You can put the radar on a table height, you can put it on a chair height, you can put it on a cabinet height, you can put it on the ceiling. In this way, we put it on a kind of a short table. And this is actually a colleague, a professor in the ECE department. Congenital hip dislocation at birth, which suffers from hip osteoarthritis on one body side due to dysfunction. So she was born. So these are the four. And that's what got our paper, the first paper ever published in IEEE Biomedical Engineering, that brings the RF sensing to the biomedical community is this one. So this is how the radar sees her walking. It's not symmetrical. It's not balanced. Right? There is one height. By the way, think of this as velocity. Think of it as velocity. This is time. Right? Your signature when you walk normal is different than that. Now take a look at this one. I want you to pay attention to her left leg. When she walks, she emphasizes the knee first, like this. Look how the radar sees the knee in one leg, does not see in the other one. By the way, this image, real time. So I asked her, come take a look at this. I said, I wasn't sure whether it's the right or the left. I said, but one leg, you have the knee so pronounced. He said, absolutely. I said, Professor, I mean, this is with the left one. This is the way I walk. I lead with my knee. And that's what got the paper published, because it's really fascinating. Of course, I'm not going to look at it. The classifier is going to, I'm going to feed this as a classifier. It's not going to tell me it's abnormal because such and such. So this abnormal case. And then I would say that, many people now, instead of using a designated, using Wi-Fi, but it's not with the same accuracy, not with the same classification rate. So we talked about this one. In conclusion, it's a very interesting area. Most interesting about it is touches people's lives. It is using RF sensing in healthcare. So if you wanna put this area in category, I say this is RF in healthcare. And believe me, I feel that 10 years from now, everybody's going to do something related to medical technology. And it's the fastest growing technology in the US and also in Europe and Australia. I spent 6 months in Australia the year before last. It preserves privacy. And this is the fight between the camera, the optic, and the radio frequency. And we won the battle. We won the battle at all fronts. Non-contact. We don't have to forget to remember, right? In fact, we took this radar to an elderly home, the retirement facility in Philadelphia. And in a discussion with the manager, he said, Professor, I mean, we have people living alone, people living with a husband, spouse, right? Wife and a husband. Then I said, well, in this case, if one falls, the other one will fall. He said, so you don't need the radar? I said, no, absolutely not. He said, we also need the radar. I said, why? The spouse will call. I said, well, my wife fell. He said, no, they don't call. I said, how come? He said, no. They get concerned if they call. They will separate the spouses because the wife falls all the time. It needs a different facility. So they will separate the spouses. That's why they never call. He said, we need a device that cannot be switched on and off. So that's something you gain by talking to, the first responders and the medical experts. So I talked to you about smart homes, talked about gesture recognition, talked about the deaf, talked about baby falling, talked about many other areas, the gait recognition. Right? And it is an area of signal processing and machine learning, of course. Training data that remains the bottleneck because you need to generate more and more data. Different than a picture, you can have millions of pictures. The RF data is still scarce and is not in abundance. Well, I thank you for your listening, and we'll stop here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Moeness, for the interesting talk. I really enjoyed it. Any questions, please? Anyone would like to ask? Okay.
What's the frequency range that you are using in your systems?
Yes. Yes. So the results you have seen, this is using 25 gigahertz center frequency, carrier frequency, and 2 gigahertz bandwidth. But some of them are CW and only one frequency. To get the range, you need the bandwidth. So if you're interested in the range, you have to use a bandwidth. In this case, we use the 2 gigahertz around the 25 gigahertz. But your question is right on target because people say, well, how about the millimeter wave? How about the 60 gigahertz? How about the 2.5 gigahertz? 2.5 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz is where the Wi-Fi, that's why the Wi-Fi is not as right. So it will have, the Doppler, the relationship between the velocity and the Doppler is function of the wavelength. Right? The smaller the wavelength, the more pronounced your heart to the radar, right? So the higher you get in frequency, the better the results. However, how many radar would you put at home? If you're going to put only 2, because the radar must see through walls, you're not going to put a radar in every room, right? You can say one dining room, one in the living room, right? And you depend, you're going to do fusion, you're going to work in concert, right? So 70, 60 gigahertz, very difficult, especially here in Egypt. In the US, it's all wood. It's concrete. Okay. The signal loses 30 to 40 dB as it goes through a concrete. You're talking about 80 dB. So if you go 60, 80 gigahertz, it becomes a problem. So unless you have a line of sight, then it's okay. But the 25 is a compromise between the high and the low. What's the second question? Excellent question. Thank you.
This is why I'm asking because some of the medical applications take around 400 megahertz because it's safe, but another recommendation to use millimeter wave in 60 gigahertz. But the problem will be very narrow.
The distance also.
Yeah. Another question was optical radar, RF radar, optical infrared radar. This can be, I think, is there any result from this type of radar using infrared?
Yes. So this is actually this where the automotive is a fight between the radar and yeah. So the technology we built on is the infrared. The infrared, which is actually thermal.
Yeah.
So you can have thermal in addition to radar. The thermal does not have the resolution that the radar will do. So that's the thermal, the infrared, which is based on heat, can tell you there is a motion detector on all infrared. When you go to the laser type of things, and which are frequency, first of all, it's expensive, and then the safety is in question, right? Because you cannot fly now a U.S. carrier with that's why I didn't bring a laser pointer. If they catch you with a laser pointer at the airport, they consider a laser pointer is alive. In the U.S., in England and Australia, I was stopped because I lecture. My laser pointer is like my phone. I put it in, put it here, and I forget about it. So when you have a focused beam in a laser type beam, right, the security and safety and hazardness of that has not been established yet. So the way we were able to get this technology approved is that we have to prove that the RF power, the dB emitted from the ray, which is 5 dBm milli, right? Smaller than what your phone emits. Otherwise, kiss this technology goodbye. So the safety is very important, right? And by the way, in the US, it's different. There's something called IRB. When human subjects are involved, you have to get the approval, and you have to prove under no way it could be hazardous to anyone. I'm telling you this because the French showed that if you have a cat or a dog, and you let that cat or dog jump from a table to the ground, the radar signature the same as somebody fall. Right? But of course, the cat or dog will move. So not only I have to look at what after falling, what the person, right? So we actually brought the dog in our lab. Right? But to get permission to use the dog in the lab, 10 times more difficult than to get permission from human, because the dog cannot sign. You have to agree to it, right? Yeah. So one thing that if anybody, I don't know about the regulations in Egypt, but certainly getting approval of using human subjects, although it's contactless, but it becomes front and center. So any other technology and any higher power emission has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, because according to IEC standard, we can use above the range of 1050 wavelengths in nanometer, so it can be increased the power with the safety regulation, because we can reach to 20 dpm, 20 dpm without any problem with the human body. So in near infrared, we are talking about above 1055.
How about the beam width?
It is a controller. You can control according to the option.
So you have to steer.
Yeah, you can steer or
Okay.
something.
Yes. So it's the same thing with the 60.
Maybe you can control the divergence angle, you can use steer. This is according to the reflection of the amount of the power.
Yeah, but certainly when you increase the frequencies, the beam will be narrower in general. So all the millimeter wave is a steering beam. There's nothing wrong with the steering beam, right?
Yeah.
But everything you saw here is one beam. We didn't steer it.
Yeah.
So you have 60 degree azimuth, 45 millimeters.
Thank you, Doctor. Any questions, please? Okay. Okay.
For the room you are using the experiment, the room you are using, is it important to use the experiment in this room?
No, that is actually my apology. My apology to that. This is a radar. This is a radar imaging lab, right? So it's the same lab when we image. By the way, we build walls here. We build concrete walls, and we see people behind walls. Right? So that lab, when it first established, was because of this book, seeing people through walls, and imaging and finding things. So it's important to understand the phenomenology. Right? You have to be able to walk before you run. Right? So it's very important here to consider the best case scenario first. Right? That means no multipass, no reflections, right? Especially from the wall. So sometimes we cover the floor with absorbers, then we conduct the experiment, then we peel it off, then we see what the cost ramification are in terms of allowing the multi-pass. Right? So what you saw here, the absorbers, because we are doing something else in the lab, and putting on and off the absorbers are very costly. But I have also pictures in my own conference room where we took these things, because the reader is portable. Right? It's just good. So you can actually, we took it on campus. We looked at auditorium like this, not necessarily for this topic, which is basically activity of daily living, but it's more of a security looking into whether we can, as I said, discern that this is a classroom or this is a lecture. So it's a small radar and you can move it around and things like this. But the absorbers should not give you the wrong indication that you need to have. No, not a problem. Yes, please.
I didn't see if there is more than a person in a room. Like the radar would recognize many persons.
That goes to the professor was said. First of all, you can separate people in range, in cross range, and in Doppler. People are moving different velocity, right? So you can do they are separable. So the radar can separate targets, right? Now the question here is sometimes if I walk this way and young lady walks the other way, and at the intersection point we have the same range and the same angle and walking with the same velocity. Right? But the idea of, do you really need to invest money and things for this single milliseconds, right? That when the targets are not resolvable. So the question is, whether it's important or not, right? But once you focus on the person, then you can now look at the gait, look at the sitting and standing and all the things. So there is a tracking element of that. So people are doing target tracking, which we have, right? You can bring in these tools into this one. But multiple people are no problem.
Any other questions? Thank you, Professor Moeness.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Your presentation. I would like to have more presentations sooner in my university. It's our pleasure to have this presentation here, and wish to have more collaboration, inshallah, in the future.
Inshallah. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.